Hey, welcome back to the Brewing Business Show, guys. I'm excited to be here again with you. And guys, today we have a very important guest. He is someone who has dedicated his entire career to help and serve the craft beer industry around the globe, and whose expertise has no equal. He is a distinguished professor of management and entrepreneurship at the University of Portland, and he's also a shareholder and board member at Oakshire Brewing and the founder of craftingstrategy.com, which is a global community for beer industry entrepreneurs and stakeholders. And today, guys, he's with us here to share his knowledge and experience. So welcome to the show, Sam. It is a great honor to have you here today.
Thank you very much, Pedro. There's a lot of people out there that know a lot more than I do, but I just have more time. You know, professors, we have this, the best job in the world where we get to pick something that we care a lot about and spend most of our time thinking about it and trying to help people. And so it's a real honor to be here today with you.
It's an honor to have you, man. I have been reading your work, and I think you've been doing a great job out there and helping a lot of people, and I truly admire that. But while we don't dive in real quick so people can get all the valuable information, why don't you share a little bit about you, about your background, so people can get to know you more?
Sure. So I think I got into this business because I'm a bad soccer player. I was in my doctoral program about the second year at the University of Oregon, and we had our first baby, and I was kind of a struggling student, and so my wife said, you know, you just go have some fun. You know, you're struggling as a student, you're trying hard as a dad, but you know, go do something you're good at. And so I said, all right. And so me and a couple other doctoral students formed a city league soccer team, and I was the worst player on the team, and the second worst player on the team started a brewery. And so we that brewery is now Oakshire Brewing. And so Jeff Althouse and I struck up a friendship of sitting on the bench together, not getting into the game, because there were some good players on the team that deserved to be on the field. And we would just share ideas. You know, I was a recovering civil engineer that knew how to build stuff. Jeff was a former middle school math teacher who made a great homebrew recipe, whose neighbor basically said, man, why don't you quit? Your beer is a lot better than you are as a teacher. Why don't we go into this business together? And so I just volunteered, you know, like a lot of people, to get into the beer industry. They meet somebody and they think they're just amazingly talented and just the right kind of people, and they're hard workers, and they just want to help. And so I helped Jeff, you know, learn how to find subcontractors, how to place concrete, how to stand up his tanks, how to rig his tanks, you know, for transport. And, you know, I'm a former construction guy. So I knew how to do all this stuff that he needed. And it gave me an outlet. I was a poor doctoral student. I didn't have very much money, but he would pay me in free beer. So it was a perfect match.
Absolutely.
And,
nobody's going to say no to free beer.
That's right. That's right. And so to fast forward a little bit, Jeff, when I graduated and I took the job at the University of Portland, Jeff asked me to join his board of directors. And I said, man, that's really flattering, but I have to turn you down because we're friends and I might have to fire you someday. And he said, we're not that good of friends and I need your help. And I said, well, that's fine. But I said, listen, there's professors out there that all specialize in something. And there's got to be somebody out there that has taken a look at small craft breweries and specializes in brewery strategy. Give me 6 months. I'm going to go find her or find him and ask them to join your board, because I think that's really what you need, is somebody with the right experience. And he said, that sounds great, you know, no problem. So I moved to the University of Portland and started looking around, and I couldn't find anybody. I went back to Jeff, kind of tail between my legs, and I said, I'm really sorry. I didn't find anybody. And he just looked at me and smiled and said, make that your thing. He's like, why don't you become that person that you can't find? And just, you know, the light bulb went off, and I was like, that's going to be so much fun. You mean I can just think about beer and money all the time and help people? And, you know, I guess that was about 12 years ago, 11 or 12 years ago. And Jeff, basically, I then went to my boss at this Pamplin School of Business, and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. And fortunately, he said, great, what do you need? And I said, well, I know a lot about one company, and I know a lot of, as a consumer in Portland, Oregon, I know a lot about other companies, but I need money to fly around the world and interview brewery owners and find out if what works here works other places or how it's different. And fortunately, he said, sounds great, here you go. And he sent me on my way, and I just started, you know, I'm sort of like a brewing entrepreneur therapist. That's kind of my my role. I sit and I listen to people talk to me about their problems. Brewers from all over the place. My first interview ever was Tommy Arthur at the Lost Abbey. Tommy, is really a living legend in this arena. We're still in contact. In fact, we co-wrote a blog together just a few weeks ago about flavor innovations and are we reaching the limits of different styles of hops and other additives and things that he's worried about for innovation to continue in the industry. And yeah, I'm the luckiest guy around. I've been to China multiple times to learn about their beer industry and help it grow. I just returned from Australia. I spent a year in the Netherlands studying European beer markets. So yeah, Pedro, you might think you're lucky, but I'm definitely the luckiest guy around.
You definitely are. There's no doubt about it. And it sounds like you've been having not only you have a great story, but you have a great experience since you started in this industry, which is awesome. And I think that is something that people should pay attention to it because you have a lot of knowledge to share with them. And that is important, especially during these times, right? Especially people like you or people like me and other people out there who's trying to serve this industry, that we understand the need out there to help the breweries understand that there's the business to run as well. There's not only about making great beer, but now is the time to focus on the business part. Am I right?
Well, and entrepreneurship can be a really lonely job, and so another part of what I was trying to build along with Mark Meckler and Joe Belcher, my two co-founders at Crafting Strategy, was to build that connection. We saw that we saw the camaraderie in the industry, the wonderful sort of sisterhood and brotherhood among brewers, and just the relationships on the beer making side, the fermentation science side, were so strong. But the folks running the business and running marketing and dealing with suppliers and designing supply chains, and they were a little bit more lonely. And we felt like they needed their own tribe and their group of people that spoke their language. And we just saw a need for that. And that's what we wanted to do, was use what we're good at, which is teaching and learning and research, to kind of tweak the conversation more towards running a business, because a lot of people get into the beer business because they think it's about making beer, but it's actually about selling beer. And if you're not selling beer and you're not making a margin, there's this great accountant member of Crafting a Strategy who has this saying of, you might have gotten into this with a mission to make great beer, but without margins, there is no mission. You've got to make money, and you've got to structure your business the way to do that. And currently in the COVID-19 space, all the rules are different. And it's just been really impressive to watch our members at craftingastrategy.com band together and help each other and come up with new business models to stay alive.
That's incredible. Can you share with us some of that ideas that your members are coming with right now? Maybe that's something that
absolutely.
people watching this can.
Sure. So, and anybody can check us out at craftingastrategy.com. We've got overall, I'll just give a brief summary and then I'll talk about the innovation. So Mark Meckler and I Mark was a chef and has had every job in hospitality, from dishwasher to chef de cuisine to food and beverage manager of a resort in Aruba. And he did that for about 20 years before he became a professor. And, Mark hired me to be a kind of a regular strategy professor along with him at the University of Portland. But we both had a love and a passion for hospitality and beer. And we realized that most of the stuff that we were teaching in our MBA classes didn't apply to little breweries. For those of you out there that have an MBA, you can boil it down to basically there's one strategy: get big. And if you're not going to get big, there's not a lot of options for you. And so what happened, and what we're seeing with a lot of brewery closures around the United States, is breweries followed that mantra. Well, the only way to grow is through scale and through wholesale, and to get my beer into every Kroger across the country. And if you had that strategy 25 years ago, it was the right one, right? It was the way to go. But now, with so many new entrants in the market and over 8,000 breweries, a lot of the breweries that are stuck on that path and that built a bigger factory and scaled up their production, they're out of business now, because the market did change. And the big players, AB InBevs and Heineken's and Carlsberg and all these big folks, they own access to market in the traditional sense. And so we've all had to move to more of a taproom model, and that was very successful for a long time. But now we can't have people in our tap rooms. And so some of the innovations that folks have come up with in our community are really cool. And they're from, just the initial desperation move of selling beer to go, working with the regulators state by state to get the law changed to allow to-go beer sales, home delivery. In Oregon, where I'm at, just by filling out one form with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, usually with only about a day's delay, you can start delivering beer at home. And one of our members, Brewery Brewing here in Portland, Oregon, they looked around, they said, well, our normal self-distribution business in draft to bars has been closed. So what do we have? Well, we've got a fleet of trucks. We've got a great presence on social media. We've got a great bunch of fans that are, shelter in place. What can we do differently? And they've got a really robust storefront now where they're doing next day and sometimes same day home delivery of their beer. And, they had some additional advantages that they've talked about in the media in the last few days. They had their own canning line, so they didn't have to wait or bring in somebody else's canning line. They can make it extremely sanitary and make sure that everything is packaged really well and deliver to their customers. So I've seen that. There's been other fun responses from some of our members. Backwoods Brewing in Carson, Washington. They are co-located. Their brew pub is co-located with a grocery store that they also own, so they have a big parking lot. And they were sitting around trying to figure out with ideas, and they came up with a drive-in movie. So they put a screen up in the parking lot. They got some technology that allowed them to broadcast the sound from the movie over the AM radio waves, I believe, and into people's cars. And so they said, let's practice safe social distancing, stay in your car, and we'll walk beer and pizza out to you. And they ended up having, 50, 60 cars show up in their parking lot. And it was really great for the community. When people are feeling separated from each other and they just want to feel normal, here comes a craft brewery that says, hey, this is safe. This is going to help us. And we think it might help you too. And, I've just seen a lot of different options like that. And not only in the United States, but in Europe and Australia too, where we've got crafting a strategy members, working together to get through this while we wait for some help. In the United States, wait for help from the government. And that stuff's starting to roll out too.
That's great. I like the idea of the movie. That's one of my favorite ideas I ever heard.
Isn't that fun? Yeah.
Yeah. Fun, kind of like old school. I think is a great idea. And that only shows that even in these times, there's opportunities for everybody. I know that in every states have different laws, and there's some states or some breweries in different states that have more opportunities than others, like the home delivery and all that stuff. But that doesn't mean that the opportunity is out there to innovate and keep selling beer. And like you were saying, it is all about adapting to how the market has changed. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 or 6 months, but there's definitely something changing right now. And from the way I see it as a marketer, it is now people is learning how important it is to take advantage of social media, something that we've been speaking for years, something that we've been preaching for years. And people is like, no, I don't need the social media. I think it's a waste of time. But now is the only channel that you have available to promote your beer and even distribute your beer, right?
Well, and I think it's even more than that. I think now more than ever, being nimble and being able to change is increasingly important. Previously, especially in beer sales, scale was the most important thing. And, if you go down the road of scale, you're going to have to you're going to have to buy a bigger brew house that makes larger batches. So effectively, you're going to be building capacity to make fewer and fewer beers at a cheaper cost at a time when customers demand more variety and more beers. And so there's a fundamental flaw between what the customers want. I use the word promiscuous to describe craft beer consumers. There's no loyalty anymore. They always want what's new. They always want something different. In a lot of ways, they're not even style loyal, much less brand loyal anymore. And so if you believe in the old game of scale as a brewer, I think you're going to come upon hard times. And, we've even seen that with the largest brewer in Portland, Oregon, Craft Brew Alliance, who ultimately ended up selling the rest of their shares to AB InBev. They were tooled up during a time to make Widmer Hefeweizen and go nationwide. And it was absolutely the right strategy. It was absolutely the right strategy. And then they switched over when preferences changed and those sales went down. They started making a light lager Kona beer, and it was absolutely the right strategy. But then they got surrounded by a bunch of little breweries in Portland, over 100 breweries that were offering people choices, more choices, different choices. And the consumer base kind of changed. Pedro, when you and I grew up, my dad was a Chevy driver, and if anybody owned a Ford in my house, they were asked to leave. My dad was a Coors drinker. He still is a Coors drinker. But the people that are coming into the market right now, that are coming over from wine or spirits, maybe they like sour beers. There's an expectation now that craft breweries have to offer a wide portfolio. And if you're going to do that, you need to have smaller equipment. It's going to cost more. You need to be more nimble, and you can charge more to make up a lot of those costs. And so that's really the pivot that I think we're seeing globally, not just in the United States. The pivot is towards designing a business model to match the consumer preferences. And we have educated, smart, picky, promiscuous consumers. So serving them one kind of a beer, a flagship model, just doesn't work anymore unless you're already large.
Absolutely. And I think you're completely right. I mean, the consumer is becoming very smart and, like you said, more picky. But now you mentioned at the beginning about how hard it's for a brewery to scale. I have seen that a lot as well. I don't know. I would like to hear your opinion on this, but the way I see it, I think there's some fear when it comes to scaling their business, or there's no goal in becoming a bigger brewery. I don't know why, but that's how I perceive it sometimes. And at the end, it's like we all got in business to grow and scale, gain financial freedom, and provide better for our communities, our families, and our employees. So why do you think there's so fear of going bigger as a brewery?
I think it's a great question. And I think that it boils down to, how do you define growth? So traditionally in beer and in most business, growth was through volume growth. I need to have a bigger factory. You know, the standard metric of growth in the United States and globally is the barrel in the United States, or the hectoliter, in other parts of the world. And so for a long time, success was defined by how much beer did you make last year? Well, you can make a lot of beer, but if you're not selling it all, you're not going to be profitable. And so we did a presentation at the Craft Brewers Conference in, I think about 2016, where we looked at probably the most famous small brewery out there in the world, Russian River Brewing, makers of Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger. And at the time, they were world renowned, known all over the place, looked up to by so many people. And they only made about 14,000 barrels of beer the prior year. And I started saying to myself, how have you scaled your brand and scaled awareness and scaled the mind share of what you do? I'd like to tell people about that, because I was worried that if people only thought about scale in terms of growing volume, they could get themselves into trouble. And unfortunately, I was a little bit right about that with a lot of breweries. You know, we're seeing now that the 200 largest breweries that built a good plan 10 years ago on scale, when that was working, they have to merge with each other in order to stay alive, to drive down their average cost of goods sold, or they have to get bought by a foreign brewery with deep pockets, like we've seen with Founders getting bought by Maho San Miguel and Lagunitas, and all of these acquisitions. And so what we said, we called Natalie Chilurzo, Jeff Althouse and I from Oakshire, we called Natalie Chilurzo, who runs the business side of Russian River, and we said, we really look up to what you're doing. We believe that your surgical distribution to, sometimes only one bar in one city like Philadelphia at Monk's, the fact that you own your local market, the fact that you've been innovative, and in the first quarter of every year when beer sales are down for everybody, you throw the Pliny the Younger event and you bring millions of dollars in impact and economic activity. And so we said, how do you define scale, Natalie? Would you help us have a conversation about the best way to scale? And she said, absolutely. And she talked about scaling your profits instead of scaling volume. She talked about scaling happiness, scaling benefits to your employees so you can keep the best people. And we just gave a really interesting talk. We also had John Lenzini on there, who runs a small brewery in the Northeast. And basically all of us were saying, you don't have to choose the one path that everybody else has already chosen. Getting big through scale really worked well for breweries like Ninkasi and Deschutes and Revolver and some of the breweries down by where you're at in Texas. But part of strategy is doing something different. Doing the same thing as everybody else, eventually you're going to run into a wall. And where we're at now with the scale game is the breweries that are really winning at scale right now. And I can talk about the importance to the overall industry of these flagship breweries that are winning in scale. The breweries that are winning right now, they have access to deep pockets. They have access to Heineken's marketing expertise and distribution channels and relationships. They have access to Maho San Miguel, to AB InBev. they're playing a different game, and they're much better at it than most of the craft breweries around there. And so if I'm a craft brewing entrepreneur and I'm running a really solid 5,000, 1,000 barrel brewery, and I've got happy employees and profitability, instead of scaling through by a bigger factory and trying to get into every Trader Joe's around the country, maybe what I'm going to do is, especially when the COVID gets finished, I'm going to open a second tap room, and I'm going to sell beer at an 80% gross margin instead of a 40% gross margin. And I'm going to scale my profitability, and I'm going to scale the number of people that I can employ, not on the production side, which is the way we used to do it, but on the hospitality side. And so I think when things get normal again, and people start visiting our tap rooms, first of all, I think they're going to come back in mass. I think people are going to miss the interactions. They're going to want to be around their friends. They're going to want to see them. And but I also believe we can use the innovations that we have now, that we've been forced to use now, to scale our business after things return to normal. There's going to be people that might want home delivery. There's going to be opportunities to show drive-in movies, even when you could just go back to being normal. And so I'm getting a little off track here, but Pedro, the basic idea is scale doesn't have one definition. It doesn't have one metric anymore. There's a lot of different ways to grow. And I want more breweries to stay alive and not try to only grow through scale, because that's where you can get into trouble.
Absolutely. Wow, that's great information. I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because, and I'm going to agree with you on that. I think one strategy can be dominate your local market and focus how you can attract more people, how you can retain more people, or keep making the same customers coming back over and over again. Have a strategy to do that, And right now is the opportunity to collect all the information that you need to know who's your audience, to define better your offers, and make sure that after we get out of this situation, like you said, people are going to be ready to go to the tap room after we get out of this situation, probably going to make a tour around Dallas because I missed it as well.
Yeah.
People miss this, so I'm sure that after we get up, this is going to be a great comeback. But that doesn't mean that you just have to sit and wait for that day, but actually craft a strategy that can benefit you. Make sure you can take advantage of as much as you can when we're ready to go back to our normal lives. Would you agree?
Yeah. And here's another thing, and we've talked about this on crafting a strategy. When you decide to scale and sell beer nationwide, you may or may not realize that you've made a tacit choice in your head that fresh beer is no longer the most important thing. And that's kind of hard sometimes for craft brewers and home brewers that have gone pro to realize that if you make a choice to ship your beer really far, you have to tweak your beer to make sure that it's shelf stable instead of fresh. And that's a touchy subject for a lot of folks, And it's so if you really care about fresh beer and you really care about serving a fragile beer, like an IPA, if it's not consumed in about 90 days, if it's in a glass bottle, it's probably not going to taste right. And one of the challenges of being a brewer is we only taste the beer at its peak of perfection at the factory. If you're not out traveling around to your accounts and trying your beer, you might not realize that you've got old beer in the market, stale beer in the market, kind of a malt explosion. And if that's the first beer that somebody tastes of yours, you could be in trouble. So another strategy is, again, sell the beer as close to home as possible. Go deep in your local market as much as you can. And that way, you can focus on delivering really fresh beer, delivering a high variety of beer. You may not need to use a centrifuge. You may not, most of us don't pasteurize our beer. But I'll tell you what, if you're going to ship your beer overseas or stick it on a boat or on a rail car, pasteurization can be a great way to make sure that it tastes right at the end. And that's why, light lagers, Budweiser had this all figured out decades ago, putting in beer that creates the most shelf-stable beer possible so that the beer tastes the same everywhere, and then work really hard on your brand and marketing to build a culture and a following. Well, guess what? If you decide not to pasteurize your beer because you want it to be fresh and philosophically you think that might remove too much of the flavor, well, then don't try to ship your beer long distances. Do something different. Do something that's aligned with the product. Sell as much as you can through your tap room, self-distribute locally, keep more margin for yourself. Just, really try to align what your goals are as a brewer with what the business opportunities are. And that's really what crafting a strategy is we basically rewrote every lesson in the MBA to be about small breweries, and we changed the rules to work for small breweries, and we put it on a website. And we sell it for $99 a year to anybody who wants to learn how to think strategically from the lens of craft brewing. And we think we're one of the best deals in beer business education around, and we're pretty proud of it.
I think it is a great deal. $99 for a year for all this education. I think you're doing a great job. It is
No, thank you.
you're basically giving this away for free. All this knowledge that you have and the way that you have craft these for, like you said, for small breweries. Because here's the thing. I know that some of the objections that I face sometimes is like, I don't have the budget to work on my business. I don't have the budget to do marketing, to work on a campaign and all that kind of stuff. But here's the reality: is like we're not in the 80s and the 90s where you would have to spend thousands of dollars in a marketing campaign. Is that you don't have you can adapt your budget to make sure that your business is growing and thriving. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that in the past, let's say 15 years ago, if you were selling most of your beer through wholesale and you relied on your distributor and their expertise, and they have a lot of it, their marketing expertise, their relationships with bars and with grocery stores, that was a good strategy 15 years ago when, say you signed up with the Miller distributor and they had, maybe only like 10 craft brands in their book. And so they were able to evenly support all of the breweries that were in their portfolio. Well, the times have changed now. And, it used to be when they showed up at your dock and they took the beer in their truck and they paid you and they took it to the distant market, a lot of brewers thought that their job was done. A lot of brewers thought, well, they're going to do it for me now. And truth is now they have 75 craft breweries in their portfolio and not the same number of new opportunities to sell it. So they're having to make really tough choices. And so if you are selling some of your beer through wholesale, and put your distributor hat on for a second, if you're not supporting them with your own, if their supplier, their brewery isn't giving them marketing support, isn't helping them do a better job, it's not just about delivering on time and delivering freshness, it's about getting the word out. So if you're not making those investments, that distributor is probably going to say, man, I love these guys, their beer is awesome, but Brewery X down the street, they've got a person on the ground in town with me, they've got a great social media presence. It's actually quicker and faster for me to redeploy my mind share and my attention over to the breweries that are supporting marketing, and you can get in trouble.
And you mentioned something very important right now, is an investment, and that's I think most people don't see it that way. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to a new strategy to find new ways of distribution or new ways to attract more people to their brewery, they see this as a burden, as a cost for their brewery, when in reality it should be an investment. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, there's so many former science teachers and chemists and engineers that start out as home brewers and they get into it, and really it's all about the beer, and that's what their passion is. And so it can be hard for them to sort of pull back and especially as the brewery grows. I mean, usually the first real hard decision that most brewing entrepreneurs have to make is, I got to hire somebody else to make the beer. Man, my business has grown to the point where my attention is not best spent making beer anymore. There's really talented brewers coming out of all these great programs spread across the country. There's almost an oversupply of brewing talent in cities like Portland, Oregon, and increasingly in a lot of other cities. And you have to take a good look at yourself as the entrepreneur and as the founder of, where is my time best spent? Is it better spent building sales relationships? Is it better spent working on marketing? Is it better spent raising money for my next expansion? And unfortunately, the answer is probably, yeah, I should stop making beer. Not because I don't care about it as much, but because I need to redeploy my brain and my 24 hours a day to growing the business. And I can fill in with extremely talented brewing staff and packaging staff and all kinds of folks in the stuff that I love to do, but it's maybe not the best use of my time right now. And that's a difficult pivot that a lot of founders have to make.
I totally agree with you. But the truth is, like one of my mentors said, if you have a business where you cannot walk out from your business for a week or two because there's not going to be business anymore, you don't own a business, you own a job. If you don't have, you have to make the decision to start working on your business and not only in your business. Because if you're working in your business, like I said, you don't own a business, you own a job. And the point of having a business is for you to again, work on your business and make sure that your business is growing and that you are providing jobs, that you're serving your community and doing greater things than just running a business. So I think it's great that you brought that point right now, because I think it's important to understand that. Like you said, it's hard. It's a hard decision to make. Like I think I've been through that at some point as well, where I have to delegate some stuff, and it is hard to make that decision, but it's something that you have to make it. Like on our first interview on this show, we were talking about core values with somebody who went through the same situation. He was working 20 hours a day in his business until he understood that he needed to work on his business, and now he's delegating to more people, and now he's have a thriving business. And I think the same applies for any brewery in the industry.
Well, and I think, you hit on one of my favorite sayings there. It's almost like we scripted this, which we actually haven't. So this is really good. But, one of the ways we talk about crafting a strategy is, for most entrepreneurs in the beer industry, they're so busy working in their business that they don't have time to work on their business. And that's really what, people like yourself, that's what consultants do. And, consultants at the right time, even the good ones that cost a lot, they can fundamentally change the trajectory of your business. And for me, I already have a full-time day job. I love consulting. I've done it in the past. I do it occasionally, but I cost too much. And honestly, I have little kids that play sports, and I want to be there for them, and I don't want to be on a plane, flying around helping people, even though I love helping people. And so when Meckler and Belcher and I sat down to talk about, well, how could we make the consulting relationship, number one, affordable, number two, accessible, and then a little bit selfishly for us, and we don't want to be on a plane. And that's how crafting a strategy kind of came together was, this stuff, if we can just use the right words and make these concepts simpler and more applied and more directly applied to brewing, and then host them somewhere, we can actually set up a situation where people can help themselves. And so if you're an entrepreneur out there that really wants help, but either is worried about the cost or is worried about time, we really think we can help, because all of our lessons are designed to be 20 minutes or less. We have an active forum. Just this morning, two posts on our forum, one from Denver, Colorado, and one from Portland, Oregon, from our members talking about, okay, what do these new programs from the SBA really mean? Which one should I be looking at? What should I take? And we've got a forum thread going on there. So if at crafting a strategy, we're really trying to get all that knowledge in an accessible, easy thing that you can, I have a lot of members when they're cleaning, most of us know that the job of a brewer is mostly sanitation. I have a lot of members who are CEOs of their company, and on their card, they're like head janitor is their title, and so if you're cleaning, why not put in a headset and listen to a podcast of, one of our members talking about how they build culture in their brewery, and how they've used safety as a means to build culture and to retain employees, and how safety is strategically important for them. We have, I think like 75 hours of podcasts on our website that you can just listen to while you're doing other tasks that, don't necessarily require your full attention. And that's really why we hope to help, how we hope to help people, which is, accessible, affordable, informative, and constantly evolving. We're always trying to add new content as things change. And right now we're in the middle of a big change.
Which I believe, like I said before, I think you're doing a great job, and you're giving a lot to this community, because for $99 for a year, I think, again, it's basically, you have like a mentorship program, basically. I have spent thousands of dollars in mentors, when brewery owners can spend only $99 right now to build a stronger business and triple their income, So I think it is a great service that you're providing. But now we've been talking a lot about innovation right now, about what's going on and different ideas. I know that people are following the same model of beer to go delivery. I hope more people adapt the movie theater. That's a great idea, to be honest. But let's dive in more into like not only on how they can sell more beer, but more into like the strategy, the core in their business right now, and how they can thrive through these times.
Sure. So on the topic of innovation, if folks want to visit craftingastrategy.com and click on our blog tab, I just wrote this blog after my conversation with Tommy Arthur at the Lost Abbey. So Tommy, hadn't talked to him for a while, and he had some concerns about running out of flavors. So has flavor innovation played itself out is the name of the blog. And man, that was a tough question, right? So he reached out, and I was really flattered that he reached out. And he said, "Okay, Sam, do what you're best at. Be a nerd. Put on your nerd hat. What would real innovation theory say about the fact that we're running out of flavors?" And I said, "Man, I don't know, but this is such a great idea." I'm like, "Give me 2 weeks. Let me think about this. Let me call some other brewers that are in our membership, and let me think about it." And so I called Dr. Mark Meckler, and I said, "All right, I think we can use Henderson and Clark's four frameworks of innovation here, but man, neither one of us are brewers. Let's bring a brewer in here." So I called Jeff Althouse, and I said, "Okay." And so really what we realized was incremental product innovations, the kind of innovations that we're all excited about, using a different hop or different yeast. Basically, what Henderson and Clark said was, if the fundamental product architecture, if the beer product itself doesn't change and you're just changing the basic inputs, yeah, we are running out of flavor innovations. We've got so many different creative entrepreneurs operating in that one box, that one space, that we are running out of innovations. And so Tommy said, "Well, what else can we do?" And so we started thinking about it. Well, there are these things called architectural innovations, and that's like MacGyver, right? You remember that show MacGyver, where he would use, a pen cap to defuse a bomb, right? And so MacGyver is a great analogy for somebody wanting to think about architectural innovation. This idea that if I just change the way that the equipment I have talks to each other, I might be able to come up with something that would really, really help. And so one of the things that Tommy did a long time ago was, on a bright tank about 2/3 of the way up, he put a port in there so that he could add priming sugar, right? Right before he packaged, to allow the beer to stay fresher longer. That's a small architectural innovation that has a huge impact on your ability to move your beer and make sure that it stays fresh. There's also modular innovations, which is a different quadrant. And so that's usually, something like starting a barrel aging program. So that modular innovation is when you just plug and play, stick in a new process into your existing product architecture. So that's where, sour beers and barrel aging and lambic beers and those kinds of things come into play. So again, you're just plugging and playing a new technology into a system that already works. And then the top quadrant, the one that's the sexiest to talk about, but also the hardest and the most expensive to do, is radical innovation. And so that's when you do both architectural innovation and modular at the same time. They kind of meet. And the best example I have with that is a beer out of Utrecht, Netherlands, called Playground IPA. And so this is a non-alcoholic IPA that tastes amazing. And they've changed, they use a special yeast that is able to go through the fermentation process without producing alcohol. They have a couple of other proprietary systems in place to package it in. It's grown something like 400% in the Netherlands and in the Benelux countries, because there is a growing consumer base out there right now, as painful as it is for a lot of brewers, that want low and no alcohol beer. And so if you can match that desire with an innovation in your brewery, that's another way to grow your business, is by bringing in new customers instead of continuing to fight for the hopheads that all of us love dearly. But that's getting more and more crowded. So why can't we bring in new customers from wine and spirits, older people that maybe don't want the hop flavor or the alcohol, make a beer that appeals to them? There's still plenty of room for innovation, and that's what that blog talks about, which is you just got to think a little bit beyond new inputs to your existing beers, broaden your mind a little bit, and holy cow, there's still a lot of room for innovation in our industry.
That's great, man. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's the topic for this episode, innovation. And I think that's what we need right now, to innovate and get creative, so we all can get through this together. And I'm excited, because I have a feeling that after this virus, I think there's going to be greater opportunity, and the economy is going to go back stronger than ever. It's going to be one hit and everybody's going to be happy as hell.
Well, alcohol sales are usually pretty strong during a recession. I hope we don't go into a full-blown recession, but if we do, again, that's an opportunity for craft brewers to create something and create a culture and create happiness and sell that to people, not just through our beers, but through the way that it makes them feel and the way that it allows people to get together. I have a virtual happy hour with some friends tonight where, talk about creativity or desperation, you can call it whatever you want. We just said, man, normally we get together and haven't seen you, so we're using Zoom we decided to set the menu. It's Italian. They're going to cook something Italian. We're going to cook something Italian. We're going to pair it with beer and wine that we have in our cellar, and we're going to have kind of a vertical tasting, even though we can't be in the same room together. And so think about the things that we're learning right now, opportunities to bring people together virtually. I think once we get back to more normal, let's keep doing these opportunities. Let's set up new interactions and new ways for your brewery to connect with close and distant customers that are looking for that feeling of belonging that only craft breweries can bring. I mean, it's such a great industry, and the camaraderie is so cool. And I can't wait for us to come back stronger than ever.
Me too. I can't wait, and what you're saying is completely right, because now they have the opportunity to actually start converting more of that online traffic into actual people buying their beer. So I think this is a great opportunity for most breweries to understand how social media can change the entire game in their breweries. So it makes me happy, because that's what I do. That's how I help breweries.
Yeah.
And so it makes me happy that they're seeing this, because after all this is over, it has to continue,
Well, and I mean, I think social media, in some ways, it levels the playing field, but only if you make the investment to learn how to do it well. I mean, and it's hard, content creation, and just the way that people get information through Instagram and things that are different. I mean, I have podcasts on crafting a strategy that talk about you shouldn't do traditional advertising until you're over 1 million cases. Traditional ad placement, television, things like that. But you should get skilled at social media. And the challenge is there is a science to social media. The pushback that I often hear is, hey man, likes on Facebook don't pay my bills. Yeah, that's true. They don't directly pay your bills, but holy cow, now you can't even go near your customers. The only way to reach them are through these channels. It's probably a good time for you to get better at that. And you don't even necessarily have to do it yourself, right? We always talk about in strategy, there's these make or buy decisions. You can internally develop your expertise in strategy or in social media, or especially now, you can buy that. You can buy the expertise, get to market faster, hit the ground running, and at prices that are really competitive. Whether it's $99 a year for crafting a strategy, or a couple $100 a month for a really sound social media marketer to bring attention to your brand and help those home deliveries increase. I mean, now's the time for folks to be investing in those areas.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to educate my audience with, because like you said, there's a science behind social media and all that stuff. Like my social media profiles, they're stopped being for my family and friends like 3 years ago. For me, that's where I connect with my people, with my audience, my clients, my network, everybody. And most of the time what I try to explain people is because Facebook, for example, made things look very easy, and people think that you just can go to your fan page and boost a post and you're going to get some engagement and you're going to get some return on investment. And it doesn't work that way. We are exposed to over 4,000 pieces of advertisement on a single day. So it is easy for people to forget you. It is easy for people to forget your offers for the weekend or the events that you have. So there has to be a path, a strategy for them to follow so they can convert more of that traffic into actual butts in seats or people getting beer to go, So.
Well, and I'll be the first one to admit, I could certainly get better at social media. It's something that is a goal of mine to get better at, not just for crafting strategy, but so I can give better advice. But again, one of the reasons we all love the beer community is there's so many different experts out there, or I don't even like the word expert necessarily. There's so many people that are willing to work hard to help, and they're better at some things that you're bad at, and you're better at some things that they're bad at. Why wouldn't we work together? And sometimes because I have PhD after my name, people like to throw around, expert this or expert that, but really it's about, I'm into this stuff. I'm interested and I'm excited about a few things that I think can be really impactful for any business, but especially for breweries. And I just want to share it. And the more people are willing to share and help each other, even competitors, it used to be you should try to keep your strategies secret. Those days are long gone. It's time for us to band together, especially small brewers, to help each other, because there is enough room for all of us. Portland, Oregon has less than 1 million people and over 100 breweries. If you and I would have read that in a textbook 20 years ago, we would have said bad strategy, right? We would have said no way. but we keep seeing more breweries enter. Oakshire Brewing just opened a Portland tap house. Instead of opening a tap house in some, small community that didn't have a brewery, we actually found a neighborhood within Portland that didn't have a brewery. And we thought, man, there's probably a lot of educated consumers there that just want a place to call their own. We can still make the beer in Eugene, which is a 2-hour drive away, and truck it up there. And we can help this neighborhood have a place to gather. Their farmer's market went away. Maybe we can be the farmer's market for this neighborhood. And, it's worked out really well. Now it's tough now because we're only doing beer to go sales, but we're going to make it. And when it's over, we're really excited to have our neighbors come back. And I think that's the mindset people need to have is we're going to stick together and fight through this and do everything we can to stay alive. And when it comes back, people are going to seek out opportunities to be close to one another again. It's going to be different. There's no doubt about it. But as long as we keep working hard, and again, that's the idea, just keep trying, keep working hard, keep supporting each other. We're going to get through this.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate your passion too, because I think you're helping a lot of people, which is, like you said, the goal of other people trying to serve this industry or work all of us together is to help each other. It's not to affect each other, but to actually help and build better businesses, better communities, and a stronger industry. And like you were saying at the beginning, like the reason why you got into this is because you were bad at soccer. Let me tell you, I suck at soccer too, and I'm Hispanic, so that's kind of like embarrassing when you suck at soccer. But the same thing, the same way you got into this because you were passionate about it. I think that's the same way all of us got into this. I when I find my moment getting into this is because I was tired of doing stuff that I wasn't happy with. Yeah, I was making money, but I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't enjoying it, but now I'm enjoying it, and that's why I'm doing these shows and bring as much information as I can, access to free information, so people can have valuable tools and resources, access to people like you, get to know programs like the one you have with the Crafting Strategy, so they can educate themselves and build stronger business, not only for them right now in the present, but for the future, for their legacy, for their communities, for the people that they're serving, So I really appreciate you sharing all this information. I think you're doing a great job. And I'm sure that people watching this are thankful as well for everything that you have shared in this episode. So let's see, we have some questions if you want, so we can start wrapping this up. We're going to be here almost an hour. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't have the questions in front of me, but why don't you fire away and I'll do my best.
Yeah, so let's see if we have some people watching. I don't know if there's some questions available right now. So let's give it a couple minutes, see somebody types a question, something. This takes a little longer to see the comments, but yeah, sure. Man, I think it's great. Crafting Strategy is I was reading about it, like I was telling you before we started the live, and it is just really, really valuable information, And
yeah, thank you. It's a joy. It's a lot of fun. It provides Mark Meckler and I opportunities to go experience the world. In 2015, we both spoke at the first ever craft beer conference in China. We made a lot of great connections over there. We continue to work with, another thing that we do at Crafting a Strategy that's fun is we work with university professors that are teaching maybe a traditional marketing or a traditional operations class, and they want to inject a little bit of fun. Maybe they'll do a month on the beer industry. And so we can use our website and package that as a textbook for professors that want to spend a week or an entire semester teaching what they've always taught, but teaching it through beer. And it's exciting because I think the students identify with a local brewery maybe more than they identify with a huge conglomerate or, the examples that professors use over and over again, like Apple or Boeing, great companies. But there's something that's cool about your neighborhood brewery and the fact that, a mom and pop shop down the street is competing head to head against a multinational and winning. That's not supposed to happen, but it's happening in craft beer every day.
Yeah, because I think there's enough space for everybody,
Yeah, absolutely.
There's
if
enough
you want to do things differently, right? If you want to just keep doing the same, we're going to run out of room. We have run out of room. But again, if you're willing to think and act differently and be a little innovative and I sound like a broken record here, I know, but there's plenty of room and plenty of opportunity.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to keep reminding this because we have to understand it. Like there's we have to get into people's mind and understand that it's time to innovate. It is time to change the way we do business. It is time to do things different and take advantage of all the opportunities we have available right now. You know, so
Well, and it's a balance too. I mean, one of the things we talk about on crafting strategy is about making choices between competing alternatives. I mean, in most craft breweries in the United States, your number one selling beer should still be an IPA, right? That's good business. It's good business to do more of what's working. The challenge is you can't build your whole business around that with a promiscuous consumer base. So you're always competing for your attention, for your resources, for your cash between other alternatives. And so, just this week in our newsletter, we put out our advanced SWOT analysis, which is how do you choose between seemingly great ideas? And we walked our members through how to do that.
that's great, man. So there's just two questions so far. Say your website is craftingastrategy.com. Do you have any other website or platform that people can read more of your blog?
Right now, it's all through Crafting a Strategy. We've got tabs across the top of our blog. You can review our core curriculum, again, over 150 content pieces plus a forum with 65 more things or so. You can review that. Some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay, but we think it's a pretty good deal. So we do have a Facebook page where we post. I probably should be posting more. I could probably use a little bit more of your advice there, Pedro. But where we do put out free content, and also we share content. We have our Twitter feed at Craft a Strategy, where if I see something good, I retweet a lot of Bart Watson stuff from the Brewers Association. I think he's a really great resource. So yeah, so kind of I have some social media platforms that again I could probably be better at using. But most of it is we try to have one home base, which is craftingastrategy.com. I'd say the majority of our blogs are publicly available. And you can always email me. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to chat with brewery owners. You can email me and we can set up a phone call and I can learn more about what your current situation is and what your goals are. And, I'd be happy to have a chat with folks. Sam at craftingastrategy.com.
We're definitely going to drop the links and your email here in the description of the video. And then the other question that we have is like, what would you recommend is, or the first thing from your standpoint should do for somebody should do to want to start implementing an online strategy?
Well, I think the first thing you should do. So are we talking about selling beer online? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think look at the products that are already out there. I've been really impressed with Square. Square is a point of sale system that a lot of us used in our tap rooms, and Square made it incredibly easy to set up an online storefront and both to drive electronic gift cards. The other thing too that's popular right now that I think is working is it's almost like selling a bond approach. So if somebody gives you $80 today during the COVID epidemic, when they come redeem that at your tap room when things go back to normal, it's worth 100, right? So there's a lot of innovations going on in terms of pricing that you can do online now when people can't physically visit your tap room. So I think number one is look at what you've already got and talk to your existing suppliers and existing providers about what they have, because it's going to get you there faster. The second most important thing is admit that you don't have all the answers. Ask for help. Asking for help is one of the best ways to get through a time like this. And, so ask for help from other brewers, call the brewery down the street. It's interesting, Pedro, it's very normal on the brewing side, on fermentation science side, where asking for help is celebrated. We have collaboration brews. Hey man, I see you make sours and I really want to learn how to do that. Can I come do a brew with you? But it's not as cool to say, how's your chart of accounts set up? I really think I could be doing a better job allocating overhead. Would you mind sitting down with me and opening up our spreadsheets? And, we actually do that on Crafting a Strategy. We have this guy, Steve Waters at Backwoods Brewing. He's a CPA. He's the CEO of the company. He'll absolutely sit down with one of our other members and say, hey, I don't think you're allocating rent correctly in your cost of goods sold. And, as boring as that sounds, those kinds of conversations need to happen. It's not just social media and marketing. It's accounting. It's finance. It's, hey, Sam, how do I talk to my investors? I've got a blog on Crafting a Strategy about how do you get the attention of an investor? How do you sell them on this exciting, sexy business that doesn't have as good ROI as a technology company they could invest in? How do you still get them to consider putting their money in? And so these kinds of the conversations that I guess that I'm better at. I'm certainly not, I've homebrewed once with a buddy of mine who's a very good home brewer, and the batch we made was actually in Dallas, Texas. The batch we made was so bad that the only thing that I can think of is that he introduced me into the process, and it just doesn't work. So I leave the brewing to other people. I'll help you with anything else.
Well, thank you for answering that, man. I really appreciate it. So I think it's time to wrap it up, man. We're going to be here for almost an hour. I really appreciate all the information. I think this is so far one of the best episodes I have recorded. And I think people is going to be really grateful for all the information that you are sharing here with us. And obviously, I will entice my community and these people in this group and other people, clients too, to check you out, because I think you have great information for them that can help them, not only right now, but in the future and throughout the entire career. But before we wrap it up, if there's something else you would like to say to this audience, maybe leaving with a message, a good advice, or something that you would like to tell them?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks again for having me. It's a great way. You provided me a great way to get to meet new people, and I really appreciate that. I think that when we are in maybe the most uncertain time in the craft beer boom since it started, since the early 1980s. And so at that time, the last thing you want to do is sort of crawl into a hole and ignore change and run away from it. And so the best thing that you can do right now is admit that you don't have all the answers. Find the people that you trust and ask them for help. Ask your customers for help. Ask your suppliers for help. We can get through this if we're willing to help each other. Ask your competitors for help. It's really, now is the time for us to band together and come together as an industry. And, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens 6 months from now, but we got to get to 6 months from now. We got to get through next week. We've got to make our next rent payment. And so have those conversations with the people that are important to your business and the people that are important to you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. And just to reinforce that, people watching this live right now or listen to this in the future through the YouTube channel or the podcast, make sure you guys join also this group, Brewing Business Network group, because this is a community for you guys to not only get access to videos and information like this, but other people in the industry where you guys can seek for help, advice, and like Sam said, help each other in not only during these times, but at any time, and seek that help and not be afraid of asking for help, because if you don't ask for help, then you don't find answers to your problems too, So thank you, Sam. Really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope we can grab that beer anytime soon, because I know you were coming this week to Dallas, but unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Take care. And thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for next week because we have another great guest, and really appreciate all of you taking the time. See you guys later. Cheers. Thank you, Sam. Take care. What's going on, guys? Thank you for watching. This show was brought to you by the Marketing Brewing Company. And if you know somebody out there who can benefit from all this information, make sure you share this episode on your Facebook, on your Instagram, your LinkedIn, send it by text, email, whatever you got to do to spread the word and help us reach more people. Now, if you're a brewery owner who's ready to grow and scale your business, make sure you go to the link in the description. That's marketingbrewingcall.com. Enter your information. That way, one of my team members can reach out to you, hear more about your business, about your story, and find a way to help you grow and scale your business and take your brewery to the next level. And also, guys, if you have some suggestions, if you would like to see some special guests in the future, you can also send your suggestions to pedro@marketingbrewingcall.com. I would love to read any suggestions you may have, because the goal and the purpose of this show is to equip you guys with resources, tools, and information that can help you grow and scale your business, but also that can help you do better things in your lives. So I hope you guys are enjoying this show. Make sure you share it with everybody, and I will see you guys on the next episode. In the meantime, cheers and have a great day.